Well, great. It looks like we're all here. So I guess I just wanted to welcome everyone to our edit board. This is Legislative District 16, State Rep Position 2, and we've got Skylar Rude and Carly Coburn. And I think I'll start by introducing the edit board. So I'm Cecilia Brexis, Tri-City Herald. And then there's Jack Briggs. He's the retired publisher. Ken Robertson, he's retired executive editor. We have Matt Taylor, he is the retired editorial writer. And we have Lori Lancaster, she is our community rep. So I think I emailed the candidates and told them we'd give them each a couple minutes for an opening statement. And then we'll just pepper you with questions after that. So I guess we'll get going. We usually let the incumbent go first. So Skylar, if you're ready, I can time you whenever you want to go, and just let it roll.
All right, I'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for the opportunity to interview with you. Good to see you again. I'll just I'm finishing up my first term, so I'll just kind of go over a little bit of what my committee assignments are and what I've been up to. I serve as assistant ranking on the appropriations committee, which is going to be especially important in the budget situation. I also serve on education, which is K-12. That's really where my passion is. I think that a high quality K-12 experience is really the foundation for a successful life and career. I also serve on college and workforce development. I am on civil rights and judiciary as well. And I serve on the rules committee. So I have one of the busiest committee loads of any member of the legislature. Over the last 2 years, I've had the opportunity to be especially hands-on because I committed to not having a second job for the first term. And that allowed me to tour school districts in the area. Over on your side of the district, I spent a full day in each of Findlay, Patterson, Kennewick, and then over on my side, Starbuck and Waitsburg, just so that I could have a classroom experience and visit with administration and teachers, find out kind of what's happening on the ground from those that are experiencing it first. A lot of times in the committee system, we hear from lobbyists that represent different educational interests. But I think being a hands-on legislator is really important. So I've done that. Remote testimony was something that was important to me as someone who worked as staff for 4 years for Senator Walsh and traveled over the mountains, that 5-hour drive to get to Olympia repeatedly, and had to put chains on my pickup to get over the mountains. So I co-sponsored a resolution with Representative Mead, who happens to be the youngest Democrat, or was the youngest Democrat. He's since moved on to a county council. And I'm the youngest Republican, so we thought that kind of a tech issue that makes government more accessible to the people that we're serving would be a good project for us. So we started a pilot to allow remote testimony in our committee system, and CBC was the location that was closest to us in our district. I just want to commend my Democratic colleagues. They allowed me to select the sites on this side, and I thought that the Tri-Cities was the most appropriate place. I also started a bipartisan work group with Representative Shelley Kloba of Kirkland. That was kind of how I envisioned bringing Republicans and Democrats together. I had talked a lot about that in my campaign 2 years ago, and really the structure of the legislature is designed for two parties and doesn't really allow for the interaction that I think is really valuable. So we started that bipartisan work group and just started that last year. So I'm hoping to expand on that and really can be a facilitator for that bipartisan collaboration. I'm guessing my 2 minutes is probably up, so I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks.
Okay, Carly, whenever you're ready.
So hi, my name is Carly Coburn. I am a lifelong Washingtonian. I was born in Bremerton, grew up in Clark County, and then spent a few years in Cowlitz County. I even lived for a year in Walla Walla County, and I have been settled and happy in the Tri-Cities in Pasco in Franklin County since 2015. our 5-year anniversary of living here, mine and my spouse's. I'd like to first thank you all for inviting us to this. I really appreciate it. I'm running, my main 3 platform points are things that I believe are really important to the people of the 16th LD, and they are affordable and accessible healthcare, affordable and accessible housing, and disability rights. In the Tri-Cities, we all know that housing is very scarce, and it can be very expensive for just a 1 room or even a studio. So I believe that it's really important that housing and the affordability of it be something that the legislative group work on. And I also believe that with COVID-19, healthcare and access to healthcare and access to affordable healthcare is really, really important right now. We've all seen, I'm sure especially all of you, have seen the headlines of people walking out of hospitals after COVID with $1 million hospital bills. So it's really important that we have accessible and affordable healthcare for the folks here in the 16th who sometimes, especially in Tri-Cities, where we can't always see a specialist provider that we need. We have to travel, can't even go to Walla Walla. We have to go up to Spokane or to Seattle or Vancouver, somewhere there to be seen and treated. And for disability rights, the disabled population, we are 25, almost 26% of the population. In the nation. And so we are a really important demographic that often is overlooked in political campaigns. And the ADA, though a federal law, it is something that goes to the state level. It affects counties, it affects cities, and it even affects websites we visit per Supreme Court rulings. So to me, making sure that disability rights are treated, disabled folks are treated right, and that our disability rights are respected is also really important to me. So that's a quick intro to my campaign. Thank
Great.
you.
No, great. That's awesome. Thank you very much. So I'm going to ask a question. I'll let you both answer. I think the main thing is I'd like to know, Carly, what do you think is the biggest difference between you and Skylar? Like if you could think of one thing that really separates the 2 of you.
I think that it is probably mostly policy and certain policy positions on some different topics. I know there's some topics where we agree pretty closely, like we are both in favor of body cams. But I also know that there are some positions where we disagree. So I think that it's mostly certain policy positions are where we are.
Can you name one of those policy positions? Do you have some examples?
So can I use an example of with a bill? Okay. So I know that Skylar believed that this was a good bill to tack his name onto, or not tack your name onto. I apologize. That's not what I mean. To co-sign. We had here in the 8th LD, Clippert put forward a bill that would have allowed more forcible restraint of children. And since the Tri-Cities is so, especially Pasco, because I live here in Pasco. So when I think about Tri-Cities in specifics, I really think about Pasco first and then bigger. But that's not how I'm running the race. That's just when I think city. And so this was when I wasn't a candidate yet. So I was really concerned because I live in a city that is predominantly Latino and Hispanic. And so I worried about those kids who are already potentially being over policed in school. Then it would be the resource officers suddenly being able to cuff kids, restrain them more. And I especially feared for restraints because of just before this bill was released, a few months before, a little boy down in Texas, and this isn't an uncommon thing, a little boy down in Texas who's autistic, just like I am, I'm autistic, He was smothered to death by two teachers' aide and his teacher. And they had to go through a criminal trial because they smothered him to death because they thought that he was too out of control. Whereas, so that's a policy point that I would have disagreed with, and I wouldn't have gone along with, because I think that in that type of situation, it's more like remove the other kids and give them the space to calm down, because some autistic children, as having been one myself, we're sometimes inconsolable and nothing is going to calm us down, and the smothering, the pressure, it doesn't help.
Okay.
So that really that was one bill that really concerned
Okay,
me.
all righty.
Yeah,
So,
sorry.
no, that's great. So Skylar, why don't you also, you can address what she said if you want to give some details about that bill that she talked about, but then also what you think it separates the two of you.
I'm sorry, my reception or my internet connection's bad. I didn't catch what you said. You said I could address
Oh.
what you said, and then it cut out.
Oh, I'm sorry. You could address what Carly was talking about if you wanted to talk about that specific bill. Did you catch what she said? So
I did, yeah.
okay, and then also what you thought might separate the two of you, like what you think is the biggest separation. So
Sure. I won't go into too much detail on that bill, but while she was talking about it, I just pulled it up, so I'm pasting it in the chat so you can read it for yourself.
okay.
I felt like it was reasonable still reading over it. I think it's a reasonable bill, and it actually came out of one of my visits to, I believe it was Riverview in Kennewick, when I was spending a day at that school, and talking to administration about the challenges for restraining students for their own protection. And so it really came out of it wasn't my idea. It was Representative Clifford's idea, but after having that personal visit, it seemed logical to me. So yeah, but I would say that I agree with Carly that policy is where we differ. I think I respect and admire. I think her heart is in the right place, and she's interested in serving the people of the district, which I think is a great reason for running for office. But this is a right of center legislative district, and I believe that my general political philosophy aligns well with this district. We're not, I mean, if you look at the history of legislators, Representative Neely, Representative, and then Senator Walsh, Senator Hewitt, I think that kind of fiscally conservative, socially moderate is kind of where we are, and that's how I identify. So I just feel like my philosophy on policy is just more in with the district. Yeah, so I'll leave it there. If you want specifics, I could say, I mean, Carly's talked about increasing taxes. I don't support increasing taxes at this point. You know, I mean, she brought up that bill. It's a difference. We haven't had a chance to dialogue with each other a lot to talk through those differences. So I'm not sure. I don't want to jump to any assumptions based on her political party ID, because I think that I don't want to put anybody in a box. I think we're all individuals with different opinions.
Okay. So I was going to give the others a chance to jump in. I don't know if Jack or Ken or Matt have a question.
Yeah, I was pleased to hear our challenger raise the issue of healthcare. I'd like to ask the two of you roughly the same question I asked your fellow 16th district candidates yesterday, and that is, right now we have critical care hospitals serving every one of the major communities within your district, namely Prosser, Walla Walla, Dayton, Pasco, plus several of the communities around. Now, I think it's about a year and a half ago, I talked with Joe Schmidt, a fellow Republican of yours, Skylar, in Pullman. He said, our critical care hospitals are hanging by a thread. And it's clear that depending on what our Supreme Court does, we could well lose Obamacare or the HCA, if you prefer, by court ruling in November, soon after the election. That would seriously damage our hospitals because they would have no way to collect any kind of payment from anyone who is likely to lose their health care. And we have, I think the number that I've heard is at least a couple 100,000 people in Washington who are likely to lose their health care if the HCA is voided. So I'd like to hear whether either of you has any ideas or any plans to try to ensure that the state does what it can to mitigate this. I know the governor has talked some about this and is certainly gravely concerned. I'd like to hear where the two of you are. Skylar, you're the incumbent. Why don't you start off?
Thanks for the question. I do feel that it is essentially society's obligation to pick up the tab for those who can't afford healthcare. That might differ a little bit from some of my Republican colleagues, but before the Affordable Care Act, Washington State had a high-risk insurance pool to cover to subsidize the cost of care or health insurance for those who had pre-existing conditions, for example. So I think, back when that happened, I wasn't comparing states to Washington State, but it seemed like Washington State was ahead of the curve on healthcare before the Affordable Care Act. So moving forward, I would say that addressing the cost is where we should be headed, regardless of changes to the Affordable Care Act. I think price transparency for pharmaceuticals and PBMs and everywhere in between. I think that shining a light on what the cost drivers are for prescriptions and healthcare is a great strategy for reducing the cost of healthcare. I had mentioned before, actually it was a previous interview, I had requested to be on the healthcare committee and was not assigned to healthcare, but it's an interesting policy area for me because it's so important to so many people in the same way that K-12 is. It's essential to have access to healthcare and to have quality healthcare. I think there are areas where there's duplication and healthcare can be streamlined. I know that just from personal experience, I went through procedures that weren't even necessary and was referred to one physician who referred me to another physician. And then, I get a bill in the mail for the unneeded visit in between. So I think there's room for cost savings, and anytime we can address the cost, make it more affordable, then it reduces the complications in developing a system that equitably funds healthcare. So I feel like healthcare is complex and there's no single answer to a question like that. But it's something that we need to be looking at the whole system and identifying what the problems are and kind of what the root cause is for the high cost, which then results in limited access.
Okay, Carly, you want to take a stab at that? Thanks, Skylar.
Sure. So I am someone who aged out of the DSHS healthcare system for youth before the Affordable Care Act came into being, before Obama was even elected. So when you say it may be repealed, immediately my mind snaps back to that, because that's where we'll go. And where that was was me going in to DSHS, trying to get health insurance and having staff tell me with a chuckle, come back when you're pregnant. Because that was the only way for women to be able to get on Medicare at the time. This is something that I personally have experienced, and I know others who have experienced this and who did go on to have kids because they had medical procedures that they desperately needed, and the Medicare would hang on for a certain amount of time after birth so that they could get those procedures done. That I know that I am someone with multiple pre-existing conditions. If the ACA goes away, I will not be able to afford health insurance. My spouse will have to drop me. I will have to drop my many medications that I take for my health because I'm autistic, I'm disabled. I have a few disabilities. And so the disabled community, we know what will happen. That is why every time it comes up on the chopping block, the first group of people you see out there fighting to keep the ACA around so that the people who do have health insurance can keep it, it's disabled folks, it's DAPT, it's groups like that. If I were elected, what the county local political organization that I am a member of and on the board of, we endorsed Whole Washington, which is an initiative, an attempt in an initiative to create universal health care in Washington. I personally have endorsed it as well. My picture's not up there yet, but I did do it. I filled out the form, just waiting for it to come up. I would love to see us do as California did and create our own universal healthcare system because I believe that we can do it. I also do understand, though, that incremental change is sometimes preferred, and I would be willing to be happy as I can be with a public option, which Jay Inslee has talked about before in the past. Especially, this is something, especially like I said, when people are walking out of the hospital, because every person who gets COVID, we're seeing that they're having long-lasting effects. Every person who gets COVID is a potentially new disabled person, and they're going to be relying on the ACA, a public option, or if we can give it to them, universal health care, because disability benefits that come from the federal government, those are meant to keep you poor and meant to keep you in poverty. And part of it is because you have to do so many medical treatments, you have to pay for so many medical bills. I had to return 2 of my prescriptions this week because I couldn't afford to pay them because there's some weird thing going on with my health insurance right now. If we had a universal healthcare system in our state, I could just go in and pick up my prescriptions and I would be able to know I'm not going to get sick in a week because I couldn't afford them at no fault of my own. So that's what I'd really love to see for if I was elected. Thank you.
Thanks, Carly. Speaking of COVID, what do you think of the governor's response to the pandemic, Carly? I'll let you go first since we've got you right here on the screen, and then I'll flip to Skylar. But what do you think about Governor Inslee's response to that, how he's handled it?
I think that he's probably been I know that he's been consulting with doctors and that they look at the CDC, the NIH. And so I know that they're trying and they're doing some best they can. I know that this was something that really no one expected or predicted. And so it was really, I do understand how it was kind of hard to know how to respond right away. I do think that there were some things that could have been responded with faster. Like we knew that there was something happening in early March, but we didn't really know what was going on because there wasn't really a ton of people talking about anything. And so activities continued, and we kept meeting. And so I think the call for social distancing and mask usage as a personal responsibility could have potentially come sooner. And And because the 16th LD, it's 4 different counties, and like where I live in Pasco, Schuyler has a different opening point than I do right now too. So the different levels are good, but I also know that like Franklin County got wiggled into a 1.5 just because they had been at a 1 for so long. They wanted to see progress. So I think that we need to make sure that we're being honest in regards to the phases, because I've seen some phases accelerate, like in Franklin County, when I observationally felt and believed, and data showed that we should still be phase 1, not 1.5. So that I think he's doing the best he can, because who expects to be one of the main epicenters of a pandemic for your state? I know Schuyler's talked about having wanted to have legislation called in, and I've told him before during forums, we've discussed it and stuff, that I have never had an issue with that idea. It could have potentially slowed things down, but it may have potentially sped things up too, in the many hands make light work kind of thought. So we agree and disagree on certain policy things, but this is something that I do think could have been a good idea and could have been helpful. But it's, kind of in the past, and we don't know now what could have been.
Right. Thanks, Carly. Okay, Schuyler.
So going back to, I think it was early March when the legislature passed the budget and appropriated $175 million for COVID response. I voted for that. I appreciate the early response of the governor, and I've never disagreed that a broad shutdown of the economy was the right choice. I think the governor was spot on to do that, especially when there was less understanding of COVID. We saw what was happening overseas in Europe, especially Italy, and it was very concerning. So I think that was the right response. Kind of step 1, but I think step 2 would have been, or appropriately should have been, to have the legislature participate in problem solving and collaborate to develop solutions to get our economy back up in as safe a way as possible. And we didn't see that. There was an advisory group set up to advise the governor, with a legislative advisory group with the governor's office. And I was not a member of it. I think there were 4 Republicans on it, 4 Democrats, if I recall correctly. And the governor disbanded it. Coincidentally, the day that one of those advisory group members joined a lawsuit against the governor. So, I think I was not a supporter of suing the governor at that time. I don't think that was helpful. I think it created animosity, and that was unfortunate. But also the response to disband the work group or the advisory group was not helpful either. So there hasn't really been that communication link between legislators and the governor that I think is necessary in this kind of a situation. So really that's been disappointing to me. It's definitely brought to light the expansive emergency powers that are currently in statute for the governor. There are 2 classes of emergency powers for him. He can, without consulting the legislature, prohibit activities according to law. But then a second class is that he can suspend laws. And for the suspension of law, he does have to come back to the legislature after 30 days and get approval. But I think it's probably time to look at that statute and revise it in a way that gives the legislature a statutory role in managing an emergency like this. So I think there are lessons learned. I think the governor For example, I have emailed his office multiple times asking for assistance in certain areas. One was a COVID testing machine for one of our hospitals, and I sent 2 follow-ups to the office. I reminded his staff on a conference call that I had sent the email. I never got a response to my email asking for, I was just asking for $100,000 of that 175 million to help purchase a testing machine for one of our hospitals. And his office still to this day hasn't responded, and I sent that in April. So there just hasn't been that communication that I think is really essential, because we're all here to represent the people of our districts. And it's hard to represent when we're kind of cut out.
Hey, could you guys,
Skylar.
are you okay? Yeah, I think I froze for a bit, but go ahead, Jack.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I was
go ahead.
asking Carly, what are you putting on the scale? What are you putting on the scale, Carly, to offset Skylar's experience, not only in the legislature but before the legislature? What are you bringing to the game?
Well, when I was 18, I became a caregiver for my grandmother and my grandfather. So I have a pre-disability of my own, interaction with the system and how it works, especially in Washington State. I have the pre-ACA personal experience, having disabilities, having to use hospitals as my, general practitioner because I can't afford one. I have a post Affordable Care Act experience as a disabled person. I spent 2 years housebound during 2014 or 2015 and 2016. So I spent a lot of that time learning. I was only able to be in bed, but I had a tablet. I was able to learn about policy. I was able to learn about the local legislature and how to see. Normally the saying is you're missing the forest for the trees, but I wanted to see the trees in the forest. And so that time, though really horrible to go through, was a time for me to be able to begin learning. And then I had back surgery, and though disabled, I was able to start getting out and doing things. Now I'm on the board of 2 different local political organizations that work directly with the state parties. I'm a representative of Franklin County. I'm a state committee member. I'm also an 2-time elected PCO. And I am on the board of 2 different nonprofits that have to do with LGBTQ topics. One is Tri-City Pride Festival, and the other is PFLAG Benton Franklin. And so I have experience with 501c3s, and I also used to be a treasurer for a PAC that was the 4C Democratic PAC, and that required reporting to the FEC. And so I have experience within 501c4 law as well. I believe I've worked to write resolutions to send to representatives like Skylar and to senators from the state party. And so I feel that Skylar does have experience directly in the legislature, but I believe that a lot of the things that I've done and the activities that I've done help make up a lot for not being a legislative aide, because until 2017, the most engaged I had been was making all my friends register to vote for the 2012 elections. Was successful. They all registered. It was a good time. So I think that a lot of that experience helps, because I know and I've worked on other projects too, like the Tri-Cities Mutual Aid Fund that's been going on. I've been a volunteer fundraiser for that. So I have a lot of experience inside and outside the political sphere.
Have you ever lobbied the legislature? You ever been there?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever been to Olympia as a lobbyist in any way?
I have not been able to, no. The trip there was always to me.
Got to get back on track, I guess now. Sorry about that. So I don't know, Matt, or did you have a question, Matt, at all? I haven't heard.
No, I'm fascinated.
You're fascinated.
I think you got two good candidates there.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. All right. So I guess will be a question for Carly, and then I'll rephrase it for Skylar. So you know Tri-Cities pretty well, but like you said, 16th district is a big district. So how familiar are you with the other counties that you'd be serving? Have you spent any time there? Are you campaigning out there? Are you aware of the issues out there? What are your what's your interests beyond Pasco?
My interest is for the whole 16th. I have delivered signs all the way down to Prosser. I'm part of the 16th Legislative District Democrats Executive Board. So we hold our meetings rotating throughout the 16th LD. I've attended the Columbia County Democrats meetings. They're really nice people. So I'm invested in their communities and their elections and things like that. I admit that I have not been much further than Dayton, except on COVID safe drives.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't been to Starbucks, and so I asked my spouse, can you help me? Can you navigate me? And so we drove out to Starbucks so that I could see it. And so unfortunately, right now we're not allowed to go out and knock on doors.
Right.
So we're phone banking a lot. So the experience I would have been getting walking through town, knocking on doors, I don't get to have that, but I can drive through town and I can see and look with my eyes. I believe at a previous forum, Skylar mentioned that I think Starbucks has a class of 40 students, but in Pasco, we have like 19,000 students in the class. So it is very different. But I'm invested in making all of this, in representing all of the 16th and making sure that they feel represented. I love Pasco, I love East Pasco, I love living here, but I want to share that love.
Sure.
I want to, Eastern Washington has a really beautiful, indomitable spirit, which I see just driving through, not even before I get to speak to someone on the phone, which is something I'll be doing later tonight, phone banking. Even before I get to talk to someone, I can just see the hard work that people have put into the area, through farms, through agriculture, through the wineries. And I've lived in Walla Walla. My spouse, Walla Walla County, my spouse is College Place.
Okay.
Walla Walla County native. He grew up there. And so even before I was running and before we moved east here, we were making trips to Walla Walla and visiting family and concerned with how family was doing there. So my heart's all in it for the 16th.
Okay, great. And Skylar, you're from Walla Walla, but obviously you've been immersed in Tri-City issues and other issues in the more rural areas of the 16th. So was that a big learning curve for you? What's your takeaway on on representing such a big area?
I kind of like the fact that the 8th, 9th, and the 16th come together, kind of converge on the Tri-Cities. You know, as staff for Senator Walsh, I was pretty familiar with the area, but some of the effort that I put into learning more about your area was my school tours, like I mentioned before. My view, and I think the view of the 8th and 9th district legislators, is that we kind of adopt the Tri-Cities, all of us, as our own, and so the whole of the Tri-Cities needs to be an interest for the 16th district, as it does for the 8th and the 9th. And that was kind of, that's not something that I came up with. This has kind of been the historical practice for those legislative districts. And I just think that's kind of something special for us. Yeah, so I mean, I make an effort. I think after this election, if we don't have any legislators from the Tri-Cities area from the 16th, then, you know, in the absence of Bill Jenkins from Prosser, we're definitely going to have to put special attention on the far end of the district, because we represent all 137 people. After the census, it might be over at 140, but 140,000 people in this legislative district, and all of them deserve equal attention from our legislature and the legislators that are representing us. So that's my goal. You know, I've maybe let Representative Jenkins focus more on that end of the district, because that's where he was from. Moving forward, I think I need to probably put more effort into the Tri-Cities area in Benton City and Prosser. I've already, not that I haven't been doing that, but now the dynamics have changed, or potentially will change in a way that I'm going to need to put more miles on my car going that direction.
Okay, great, thanks. Does anybody else want to jump in? Don't want to hog all the questions.
I got a sidebar question for Carly. Carly, I was reading your material, and you say that if you live in Eastern Washington, you're going to die earlier than if you live in Western Washington. Is that true? Whoops.
Oh, you're muted.
Yes, folks who live in Eastern Washington are more likely to die sooner than those who live in Western Washington. Part of it is because we have such a lack of primary care physicians. I know that for me, my primary care physician, because of COVID, she's working half days, so she's booked out months in advance. So, you know, and there's a lot of people here who we still have, even with the ACA, we still have more than 100,000, almost 200,000, I believe, Washingtonians that are still uninsured. So there's folks who aren't insured, don't have an ability to get insured. So they're not going to the doctors. Conditions that might be caught and could be treated aren't, and they kill you. Not like you personally, in general, royal you. They kill the person, can't get into a primary care provider, can't get into the right type of oncologist. There's so many different factors that go towards our earlier mortality rate. So that's also why I'm very passionate about healthcare too.
It's probably too late for Matt and me to move to Seattle.
So I had told Skylar and Carly that they would get a chance, if they wanted, to ask each other a question. I don't know if they've got one on their minds, but Skylar, do you have a question for Carly at all?
I kind of feel like it's like a mean to intentionally put someone on the spot.
Okay.
So,
well, sometimes it brings up, the reason we do that is sometimes there's issues that we are not aware of, that you're very aware of, and it's good to, you know, just talk it out. So if there was something that you wanted to ask her, I'm going to let her ask you a question too if she wants. So.
Okay, well, I'll ask you I'll ask in a polite way that doesn't ask any really specifics, but you have mentioned basically taxing the 1%, and I haven't heard to this point if you're talking about an income tax, or are you talking about a new tax, or kind of what exactly? Taxing 1% of what? Is it income? Is it capital gains income? Is it property tax surcharges? Is it what exactly is that 1% you're looking to target?
I was muted, sorry.
Yeah, no, I know it's hard.
Especially when you switch to the phone. So that's a good question. I think that I definitely need to converse with economics. Those words are rough on me today. Experts in economics, a little longer, but I can pronounce it. I know that I've seen things like how whole Washington talks about things. And so when I talk about the top 1%, I'm talking, I know that income tax is, I believe I heard of that is, it would require like a state amendment to our Constitution, I think. Right, Skylar? You're really good at the Constitution stuff.
I think so. According to previous case law, I believe so. I mean, it depends on if it's a progressive tax or if it's a flat tax.
So I have seen one of the things that I saw, I am pretty much open to a lot of different ways that we could do it, because I know that we have a lot of innovators in Washington, especially at Olympia. And we have a lot of experts that we can talk to. And I don't know that switching to a flat income tax is something that Washington is prepared for, because I know how much even Democrats kind of are like, no. And we always are comparing ourselves to Oregon, but I really found fascinating, and you may have heard me already give this spiel, Skylar. I'm sorry if you have. I found Idaho to be very interesting because they have a mixed tax system. And so I would like to see how we might be able to make that fit in Washington. I know that they use an income tax, so and another form of tax. It's suddenly slipping my mind, but it wasn't as much of an income tax as how Oregon does it. It's a different type of percentage and a different way that they do the math. And because they're so close to us, they're probably closer. I figured they're closer in ideology, because it's a more conservative state, especially the eastern, close to us. And so I thought that that might be something that would be something that Eastern Washington voters would be comfortable in either experimenting with, doing more research on, or just trying out. Because I know that we've used different counties in the past as kind of like mini experiments, little petri dishes. Like Thurston County has tried ranked choice voting. And so we've given different counties chances to try different things. And that's usually how we find out if things are best. So your question is totally fair, Skylar. I appreciate you asking it, because at the Union Bulletin interview, that was when you made me start thinking more on how would we cover this. And that's when I started searching, and I found the mixed tax. I'm really upset. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but the way that Idaho does their taxes, I had thought was really interesting and might appeal to Eastern Washington voters.
Great. Okay. So Carly, did you have a question for Skylar?
Yes. Also, sorry to put you on the spot. So back in 2018, I helped draft, I know this wasn't really specifically for you, Skylar, this was more for the Democrats, but I helped draft a resolution with the Washington State Democratic Central Committee that would push our state legislators and state senators there was a bill up to get rid of sub-minimum wage completely, to do away with it so that everyone, all disabled people would make the same as an able-bodied neurotypical, which means not, you don't have any brain differences like someone who is autistic or has ADHD or might be schizophrenic. It would have made it so that equitable pay would reach the disability community. It was not just the Republicans. The Dems helped kill that bill, the bill wasn't killed, it was minimized into, I believe, just state employees couldn't be paid sub-minimum wage. But sub-minimum wage now still exists in the private sector. And I was wondering what made you decide to not vote to give disabled, why you voted no against removing sub-minimum wage.
Sure, great question. And I know that there were definitely Democrats that were very unhappy with me over that vote. I still feel pretty strongly that the current system provides a real purpose. And right now, so labor and industries can provide a sub-minimum wage certificate to an employer to pay a developmentally disabled individual less than minimum wage. And where you might see some of that happening are, trying to think, there are organizations that specifically employ developmentally disabled young people, usually, to provide work at a reduced rate. And I think what that does, really what the purpose of that is to provide that opportunity for the disabled individual. If an employer has a choice between hiring, I'm just going to use an example of just a kind of commonly known disability. Let's say let's just say the disabled individual is nonverbal or has some kind of issue interacting with other people and can't function as most of these, or maybe has a reduced output of labor. It doesn't make sense for the employer to pay a higher rate or the same rate for example, half of the output. And so if we look at developmentally disabled individuals through the eyes of a typical person, then we're going to be asking ourselves these kind of questions, like they deserve the same rate of pay. But if we consider the fact that oftentimes this socialization aspect of employment for that person is more valuable for that person than a pay rate. Some individuals don't understand, don't comprehend the difference between $1 or $5 or $10. And also I think within that community, there's such a spectrum of disability from those who are so high functioning, you would never know they have a disability unless they told you. Maybe they don't even know they have a disability, to people who are nearly non-communicative and can't live on their own, and really we're just getting to a place where we don't want to like lock them up in their house. You know, you have to stay home all day. And so my vote on that bill came out of a place of understanding, based on actually Tri-City's parents who were telling me that employment opportunities provide a lot of valuable service outside of the pay. And if you remove the sub-minimum wage opportunity, then the employment opportunity drives up, and then the kid is staying at home all day, not seeing their friends at work, not providing a respite opportunity for the family caregivers. So I just think that it's important to look at the whole picture outside of just the pay rate. So because Senator Walsh was so involved in this issue, for the last 6 years, I've been more exposed to issues of developmental disabilities than most. And this is what I'm hearing from those families.
Great, great. Well, we're right at the hour mark. I was going to give you each a couple minutes to wrap up. So so I had Skylar go first for the opening. Carly, I'll let you wrap up if you want to go for it.
Sure, thank you. So I would just like to thank you all again for inviting us to participate in this editorial board interview. I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the correspondence, making sure that we got in on time. Sorry about my laptop cutting out. Again, I just really would love to represent the 16th LD. It's somewhere that I've called home now for the last 6 years, and it's somewhere that I truly love, and somewhere that I want to see representation that I think is coming and is already in the 16th LD. I know everyone calls it a really conservative area, but especially here in Pasco, in the area that I live, we are very blue. I would love to, and there Benton City is, Prosser has pockets. It's progressive ideas have already arrived. And I would like to help take those to Olympia and show those ideas to Olympias. Be like, look what we have in Eastern Washington. These are our ideas. They don't, over there, they don't know what we need with agricultural stuff. They don't know the medical needs that we have. They don't realize that we die sooner. And as someone who's developmentally disabled as well, I want to be able to go and I want to show Olympia, not just Olympia. I want to be there for all the folks who don't feel that they're being represented or don't feel represented or seen or heard. There's so many communities that feel that way in Eastern Washington, and I'd love to be not a voice for them, but an amplification for their voice.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Skylar.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. And I'm also sorry that my audio cut out. Maybe in the future, I'll just do this whole like phone audio and visual through Zoom or something. But it has been such a tremendous honor to represent this district for the last 2 years. Like I mentioned in my intro, I specifically didn't obtain a second job so that I could dedicate all of my time to being the best that I can be in this position for our district. And I feel like I've kept true to my commitments to leave my party label at the door as much as possible. I think that's important. Through the bipartisan work group that I started with Rep. Klova. When I first got elected, I thought, you know, we've had Republican legislators from this district exclusively since Representative Bill Grant. And oftentimes the county political parties have a bit more access to our legislators that affiliate with the same party. So when I first got elected, I invited all of the 4 county Democratic parties to the same opportunity. I said, you know, we're invited to Republican Party meetings all the time. If you want us to come, if you want me to come listen to your ideas before session starts and provide that feedback, I'm happy to engage at that level. And I think that's just an example of something that I don't think has been done before, but it seemed like a good opportunity, and why not do it? And it was well received, and I think the parties appreciated that. But my goal has also been to be honest and upfront in my views, and I don't really want to have any regrets in this position. I don't want any of my votes to be influenced by anything other than the desire to make good policy. And I don't regret any of my votes. There were hard ones that I took that, you know, I decided how I was voting before the voting cast. And, you know, some people will wait there and push their button last after they see how everybody else is voting. And I didn't do that. You know, it's like, this is how I feel, this is what's right. And I did that. So sometimes that was difficult, but it would be more difficult for me to feel like I was influenced by outside lobbying or political reasons. I don't want to be there to cast votes to get me reelected purely for campaign purposes. And so I just feel like I've done that. That was what I talked about 2 years ago, and I stayed true to my word, and I feel good about it, and I'm proud of my record over the last 2 years. I'm hoping to go there again and continue that work.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for participating. It was lovely having both of you. Thank you. So I'm going to keep the board for a little bit. So,
All right.
so
Have a good
all
evening.
righty. Thank you.
Thank you
Take
so
care.
much.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Later,
Bye-bye.
Carly.
Yep.
Bye, Skylar.